Hi guys. I don't think I have anything specifically to talk about, but I'll be talking about just my thoughts on uh, on our country, a few things here and there. Yeah.
Energy is the first language of a child. They speak energy before they speak English.
Uh, Now, so a few things that byenjagala okwogerako, right, is the country in for Uganda. A few things here and there to talk about, and I'm just looking for something here to guide my to guide my thoughts, because I'm trying to gather a few thoughts here and there and see what we can do. I've been reading some texts a few days ago. Ntunuulira the the issue of religion, number one, the issue of tribes in Uganda, as well as the issue of religion, tribe, as well as NC, Uganda nga yetugiraba. Now, we should understand a few things. Ekisooka, there was no Uganda before 1962. Yeah, before 1962. Okay, before maybe 1950s. Before 1950s, katugambe kale. Or if you go, wobogenda na 1962 independence, that's when you can think about Uganda as a country. That's when the country was born. That's when that's what you call the it's the birth of the nation. The birth of the nation called Uganda. Yaliwo mu 1962 October nga mwenda. But to understand, because most people tebamanyi history wa Uganda, ate mu butamanya history oyo tetumanyi nnyo kabi ke tulimu lunaku olwaleero. Akabi NRM government, Museveni ne banne kebatadde Uganda. Because Uganda as a nation is a very fragile country. Ensi yaffe eri very fragile, eri very kagamba yakwata na bwegendereza bungi nnyo. You see South Sudan, America, you see ensi zino ze tulina olwaleero, you people should understand. Ensi ataano mu esatu, the 53 states ze tulina mu Africa, 53, 58, 53 ze tulina mu Africa, they are Western-made countries. We all know that, I think. South Sudan is the newest country. America be baali bakola South Sudan because South Sudan was made by the Americans because they wanted oil. Ensonga lwaki omusajja oyo gwe bayita John Garang yafa conspiratory. John Garang never wanted to split Sudan into two. John Garang yali ayagala Sudan esigale nga yawamu naye nga the Christians as well as the blacks could serve in the Sudanese government. Unfortunately, waliwo abantu abaali baagala South Sudan to be independent, and as a matter of fact, by creating the new state of South Sudan, because abasinga the entire continent thought that, oh, this is the Sudanese experiment, really very promising, and people abantu baali balowooza nti Sudan kwe tulina okulabira, Sudan egenda kubeera nnungi, bla 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 bla, and when things went haywire with their civil war and where they are up to today, bavuddeyo ne bagamba nti some people are saying that, you know, Sudan was a mistake, South Sudan was a mistake, to the extent that they have said South Sudan is the first pre-failed state. Pre-failed state. Nti before it even started, before even they made the country, nga n'ensi tebannagikolerera South Sudan, already yali emaze okufairinga. Why? Now, some say, like, following the work of Professor Mahmoud Mamdan. Mahmoud Mamdan yaga nti the problem with South Sudan was with the transition. The problem was not the politics or stuff like that, but it was a failed transition. A failed transition from the Arabs to the blacks. Because what you know is that it is composed of three main tribes as the dominant. That is the Nuer and the Dinka. And of which these tribes, they are both predominantly Christian tribes. And maybe the Boer, I think. Kakati, surely, this should have been a country and were they succeeding. But what happened? Why did South Sudan fail even up to today? Not so many tribes. Everything was going well because they had a common enemy known as the Arabs in the north. But when the Arabs left, when they were kicked out, these guys started turning the swords on themselves. But we all know that, of course, Riek Machar and this gentleman known as, what's his name? ono kyali wa Museveni oyo president aliko kati he whatever they wanted to do. And people who made a report about South Sudan, they realized when South Sudan got her independence, ne batandika okugabana ebifo, people were hired not because of the competence. Abantu baalinga hired because of their tribe. By the way, you should also understand South Sudan as a country nayo teyalina standing army. Most of the people are baalinga, there were so many militias. The people who went and did research bagamba nti South Sudan had the highest number of generals in the world, close to 1,000 generals in the world. The highest number of generals in the world, they are found in South Sudan. Each general had his own small unit of army. As a country, they did not have a standing army at the time of independence, I think in 2010. But why did it fail? Now, speaking about South Sudan, the current state of most of the countries zetulina mu Africa, ensi zonna zetulina mu Africa ezisinga, with the exception of countries like Botswana and maybe countries like Kenya, Tanzania, most of states ezisinga ziri very, very fragile. Just one crisis like this can take the country, eyinza okuzzayo country like another 50 years or another 100 years. Look at Libya. Look at Libya as an example. Now, two things are likely to happen in a state, modern African states. Two things are likely to happen. If the country taken the Libyan route, nedde emabega for a very long time, what is likely to happen is a country is likely to face a military ruler coming up, never taking over by force, and take away all the democratic principles or anything that would have inclusiveness of inclusiveness ey'abantu ba bulijjo. Now, when that happens, it creates a lot of resistance within the state. Under the state being under a military dictatorship or a military government, like we see in Egypt. Still, people tebajja kubeera happy. So how do you balance all that? You get it? Because unlike other countries, African states, we are trying to see how to rule ourselves and govern ourselves. Most people are saying federal is the right thing to do, but most people do not understand what they're even talking about with talking about federal, because federal has been seen in different countries in Africa, but it has not worked. It has failed. So the solution is not federal. The solution for Africa and its states or its countries inakuddayo from the birth of these nations, when these nations were being created. That is where we have to start. Because even if Museveni leaves power, like when Museveni leaves power, that is where you have to go back and start and have what we call the new founding fathers. If you talk about Uganda today, fine, you can. It is very hard to know the pioneers of the state. Okay, with the exception of King Mutesa II. Now, some people might say that Mutesa is the father of the nation, because I hear Museveni giving himself the title of father of the nation, which is funny. Museveni yewa title ya father of the nation. Chobola nti Mutesa II baagala nnyo writing out of history. They like him to be written, and I'm very fascinated that the kingdom has not tried to show Ugandans the role of Mutesa I as the first president of Uganda. Whereas Mutesa wanted a special status of Buganda, which could have been ekyandibadde kiziyiza ensi Uganda, but still he played a very big role in the formation or in the birth of this nation. So the idea is most of the African states, one crisis away from being disintegrated, from being dismantled. The same we can see in Central African Republic. We can see the same in Zaire, Congo. We have seen in Burundi. We have seen in Rwanda. All these countries. But the problem, if you go back, it all goes back to how these countries were being created. That's where the biggest problem is. We were taken, never boundaries, and we were thrown into these boundaries. Look here, we're the map of the world, right? Let me ask you one thing. If you cut the map of the world, right? Leave alone these maps that have been drawn by the West and Google and all this kind of stuff. When God was creating this world, do you see any lines that were drawn to say that this is where Uganda starts and this is where it stops? Do you see any lines? This is where Egypt starts and this is where it stops. It means that the lines are man-made. These lines are man-made lines. The only boundaries that is government is the twaina or the twina that are natural boundaries that are easily made by Katonda. It is the continental boundaries. But the boundaries, the lines that you have on the map today, is making the modern states of Africa. Those lines were just drawn by the British. They were just drawn by the French, the Portuguese, and all these people. And those are the lines that are causing trouble today. Those are the lines that are causing trouble today. Now, when you read, because when these people came, before they came, we were very happy. Not very happy, but we had our problems, but they were manageable. And they were not problems that would lead to some sort of existential threats. But the creation of Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and all these other countries, exacerbating the problem. It exacerbated the problem. Increasing the problem. Chovolaba, every African leader has had a chance and an opportunity to make things right, but never gani to do that move. Most of them have refused to do that move. And that is the point where Uganda is today as well with Museveni and the NRM government. They have made the situation even worse. Literally, it is even as worse because Museveni has had 35 years to rectify most of these things. Because if he had rectified them, and maybe title ya father of the nation, to surrendering. But where we are today, he does not qualify to be the father of the nation. He doesn't. The fathers of this nation, it is Kabaka Mutesa the second, whether you like it or not. If you did not, wobanga toina muntu gwachiikirira in Lancaster nga bateesa, you do not toina kubeera, or you cannot be one of the pioneers of the Ugandan state. You cannot be the pioneer, one of the pioneers. I was reading a text about Ankole. Because when the abazungu webajja, twaina tribes zali identified zali the Acholis, the Langis, Kalamajong, Itesots, Busoga, Buganda, Toro, and Ankole. Now, so far I've read about Ankole, but I know about Buganda. If you go to Ankole, Ankole ima categories biri. The tribe, the kingdom had two categories of people. Either the Bahima and the Bairu. Now, most people don't know that. And that is very, 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 very important if you want to understand Ankole as a kingdom. Because someone cannot just come out. You don't know what you're talking about, my friend. Now, if someone comes nagati abo Baganda, now in Buganda, tetwina classes there's a video. You don't have the tetwina, for example, tibano Baganda, Baganda way, but Baganda way. Okay, you might have the coaches and all that kind of stuff, but those are really, really minor and those are well integrated. You see, that is the thing that Buganda, in terms of its administration, I'm not saying that it is the best, blah, blah, but in terms of its administration, really as inclusive as possible. Because even with the formation of the kingdom of Buganda, ojja kulaba nti the Kabaka at first he did not have teyalina maanyi g'alina nga Kabaka gwe mulaba olwaleero, because the clan heads are the ones that were powerful, and then the clan heads be balondangamu Kabaka, be beerondangamu Kabaka, and then that clan head, for example, kati ngaffe ab'effumbe ebika binnaasangwawo, ab'effumbe, Rugave, and all these other clans, they would balinga, then and then they would choose the Kabaka among themselves. But then after generations and generations, when generations passed, the title of the Kabaka Abalangira, they usurped that power. No, they are born from Olulangira and that kind of stuff, and that's how they managed. But these people, I think these people were very intelligent people of the past. In all these kingdoms, Acholi, Lango, Teso, Bunyoro, as well as Toro and Ankole, these people were very intelligent. And for Buganda, what fascinates me is how did these people who never had a writing script, they never wrote anything down, how were they able to know inti to solve the question of succession in Buganda? What we have to do is tulina okumakinga sure nti Kabaka teyeddira muziro gwa kitaawe, alina kweddira muziro gwa nnyina. Because waba yeddidde omuziro gwa nnyina, what that means is that the Kabaka will not come from the same tribe, from the same clan. From the same clan, because obakale from the same totem. Nti omuziro kituyita totem. The Kabaka would not come from the same clan. Tajja kuba nti wa Lugave throughout, because that would lead to a crisis. Buganda would not be here by today. If the Kabaka yali yeddira omuziro gumu, Buganda wouldn't be here. But they balanced it. Ne bamanya nti okay, each tribe can buli tribe esobola okuleeta Kabaka. Because the politics of Uganda was very, very deadly. Like you had to even hide the children. They had to fight. And that is how it has always been in monarchies all over the world. They had with Janola Bano, the Queen, is it Mary, Queen of Scots? Or Mary, Queen of Scots, whatever. When they had that Protestant Reformation, when the kingdom of, when the monarchy of Britain, wali mulutalo wakati waba Protestant naba Catholics, and one of the kings, the queens here I think she had to kill her sister, imprisoned her. These things were really brutal. So for me, these people who never went to school, they managed to find a solution on how to balance the politics, how to balance the administration. That is how Uganda managed to thrive. Kubanga teyalina nnyo, okay fine, mwalimu obuzibuzibu obwa leadership, but still it wasn't a very big problem. Now, when you go to Ankole and you read Ankole, it has two classes of people, the Bairu and the Bahima. I'll come back to Ankole again, but let me first go back to Uganda. In 1844, you should understand, Islam came to Uganda before any religion. And I'm not speaking this because I'm a Muslim, but that is what the records show. Before Christianity, before before Protestants and before Anglicans. And I'm not here preaching, but I'm here stating history and trying to drive a point. Obusiraamu bwe bwajja, Kabaka Mutesa the first, actually Kabaka Suna, I think Suna, yeah, Kalema, I think, he's the one who was there. He never teyasiramuka, but his son, known as Mutesa the first, became a Muslim. Now, when Mutesa becomes a Muslim, because by then, Gwanda Borarero, you would have been Muslim. Uganda would have been a Muslim state. So many things could have happened. But because these Muslims, Buganda was trading with the coast kingdoms with the Arab traders from the coast, and about trading in different commodities. So they were exposed to Islam and things like that. It is the first religion we got exposed to in 1844. Now, Christianity comes 33 years later. The reason that's why Christianity today, Uganda is more of a Christian state. It has a majority Christians than Muslims, and yet Islam was there first. It is because that the Christians, the missionaries, came for the purpose of converting people. And Gababaja from traditional beliefs to Christianity, to convert them. So Islam had a head start of 33 years, but it did not manage to get a hold. Because Islam, Tiainaba missionaries, these were just people who were there, just Gabali trading. So if you're interested in Islam, there's this saying that goes around the world where people say that Islam was spread by the sword, that Islam they force people to convert. It's not right. Because if conversions were forced in Islam, we would have seen it in Uganda. And Uganda today would have been a Muslim state. Like you would have majority of Muslims, Kalikangame. But then the Christians were missionaries. They had the missionaries. And the missionaries had a strategy. We have to teach people to read and write. We have to build schools. We have to build hospitals and things like that. And all these things attracted so many people. If you go, Nolaba Buganda actually, some writers, Bagamanti, the Kabaka, Mutesa the first, he wrote Arabic. He was writing Arabic. He adopted the kanzu joyambalo olwaleero. Why do you think that you have the kanzu y'omuleera mu Buganda? Do you know where it comes from? That is the influence of Islam on Uganda. Chovolaba, when Islam comes in Uganda, it is where it started, and then it spread to different parts of the country. And I'll come to Ankole because that is where my thoughts are leading to. So they adopted the kanzu. Some of them even had the turban. All of that is influence from the Arab traders. So this explains into before 1844, Tetwaina Kanzu within the kingdom of Uganda. And maybe you can argue within Uganda. We used to wear our lubugo. Chovoranza, I cannot say to lubugo. It is bad to wear lubugo. Anyone can wear lubugo. Even me, I can wear lubugo nengenda nesala. But it is funny that when you wear lubugo, people look at you and like, oh, look at this person wearing lubugo. As the muziki ayamba do lubugo. You should wear the lubugo. Because some people do not even understand that a kanzu, it's not a Muslim wear. It is just an Arab wear. It's not written anywhere that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, wore a kanzu. It's not anywhere, which is interesting. But a kanzu yatandikira Buganda, then ne spreading mu bitundu bya Busoga, Bunyoro, Toro, and all these other regions, as well as the turban. Now, I was reading about Ankole. We shall come back to Uganda later. I was reading about Ankole. I wanted to really understand Ankole as a kingdom. And I'm still doing my research. I'm still reading. But these are things these are things I really wanted to. There's something I discovered in Ankole, Chabade, very interesting that I'm sharing today, but I'm still reading about Ankole, and I would love to read. Now, Ankole has two groups of people, the Bahima and the Bairu. The Bahima are predominantly pastoralists. Bebalunzi bente, abamu kumendoza mubaita nabalalo. The Bahima themselves, yeah. Bebalunzi bente. Bobalunzi bante, like they are chasing cows all over the place. Those are the Bahimas. And they are tall, as well as having long noses and Mubamani, those ones, Mubamani Bahima. Now you have the ones called the Bairu. The Bairu are predominantly agriculturalists. Ngabo balimi. Balimi, ate bampi, balina nnyindo nnene ziringa ezammwe Abaganda. Ziringa ekitebe ky'eggaali. Ng'ezaffe Abaganda. The Bairu. For those of you who are Bairu here, you can tell me. So the Bairu, bo balinga Bantu tribes. Now the Bahima balinga Batutsi in Rwanda. Now if you remove the boundaries, there is a twayogedeko nozijjawo. Notunula ojja kulaba nti Ankole is close to Ankole Kingdom is close to the kingdom of Rwanda and Burundi. What is funny is this: Ntiwogenda mu Rwanda ne Burundi, they say that this country is Rwanda, this country is Burundi, but they are literally the same people. Burundi waliyo Abahutu n'Abatutsi, same people. Rwanda waliyo Abahutu n'Abatutsi, but these are two nations that actually almost went to war. And what is funny about these two countries is this: what differentiates them is that bano babayita Banyarwanda, bano babayita Barundi. That's it. But the ethnicities of the people is literally the same. Now, when you come to Ankole, Ankole, of course, was neighboring the kingdom of, kingdom of Rwanda and Burundi. Now, the kingdom of Rwanda and Burundi, the Tutsis and the Hutus. Now, Uganda mu Rwanda, the Hutus are similar to the Bairu in Ankole, and the Tutsis are similar to the Bahima in Uganda. Those two. Now, the Bahima, they are tall, long noses and stuff like that. Era abasinga Bahima bebaali bakabaka bankole bebagabe, whatever I think, bebaali bakabaka, but they were the minority. The Bairu, they are the majority. Bebasinga obungi aba abanyankole yono munyankole ono. You get it? Abo abampi abo abaddugavu abo bemulira kati abo Abairu abo, those ones, they are the majority. Bebasinga obungi, there are so many. The Bahima, they are the minority, but they are bebabadde bafuga Ankole kingdom for generations. Kigambibwa folklore or folk tales engero zaabwe nti do you guys ever studied about the things of Kakama, Kairu, and Kahima? I think, was it Kahama? Is it Kakama, Kairu, and Kahima, something like that, where they went to God. Baba Wensua Izamata Ezengeruza Baba Wensua Izamata. Anyway, Sagara Gene. But what I'm trying to explain here is this: Inti the Bahima bebafuga Ankole kingdom. Bebajifuga for all this time. Bebajifuga for a long period of time. Now, there is the idea that some people say inti the Bahima are similar to Batutsi. And they say, some people say they came from Ethiopia, Somalia, that region. And then they settled there. Kakati Chibagamba is that the Bairu were there before the Bahima. Like the Bairu were there before the Bahima. We all came from Cameroon, Nigeria, that area, the Cameroon Basin. That's where we all came from and migrated. And I'll come and teach that sometime. And then we migrated into this region where we are today, where we find ourselves today. The original inhabitants of Uganda, or the area that you know as Uganda, were the Pygmies, Abambuti, those short people, Abali Congo. because most of them were pushed into the Congo. Chovolanti, the Bantu tribes that intermarried with the Pygmies, Mwabaganda, and all these other tribes, you remained short. Mwasigara muri bampi. Okay, not so tall, not so short, but medium, just because of intermarriage. Now, the thing is that perplex anthropologists is the idea of most of these regions, the Bahima, they are tall, they have long noses, some of them are brown. Like, it doesn't make sense. The Bahima and the Batutsi in Rwanda, it doesn't make sense that if these people actually came from the same place. Now, and so they came up with theories. Soko coming up with the theory was John Speake, the Morton Stanleys, and all these other imperialists, as well as the these people were explorers. Ngabagamba the Bahima in Uganda, as well as the Batutsi in Rwanda, they look like Egyptians, Egyptian gods, like Ramses. Ntuokwata ekifaananyi kya Ramses, the Egyptian god, n'okikwasaganya n'omuhimo waddala. Abasookawo bali, they had long faces with a long nose. Kati ngabagamba these people must have come somewhere from Egypt or somewhere from Ethiopia or these places. That's what they said. And then they found themselves in the same area, and then they carried on their practice of ente, okulunda ente, and all this kind of stuff. And then they integrated, creating the Ankole kingdom. And then they have been ruling. They ruled the Ankole kingdom for all that time. And then Rwanda, the Batutsi had their king called Kigeri the Fifth. And Kigeri, yakafa juzi mu America. The sister of Kigeri, I think, is the one that is married to General Kale Kayihura. Where was I going with this? What I was trying to explain here is the idea, Bahima, yeah. The Bahimas, yeah. So, Bewa Bahima. So, their king, the one called, was it Omugabe? Omugabe, something like that. He always came from the Bahima. They never came from the Bairu. So when you're approaching the question of Ankole, be very careful, because what you're trying to explain is of finding yourself contradicting yourself somewhere. So you should know that about the Bahima and the Bairu. Now, the Bahima bakozesa nnyo Abairu as subordinates, as slaves, and things like that. Ngeranti, what usually happened was Ngomuhima watta Omuiru. What usually happened was you could go to the king and report, and then compensation would be given to you, or nothing would happen. But Omuiru nekamutanda natta Omuhima. That was war. The family of the deceased would revenge nebatta Abairu. Now, I'm not trying to do something like I'm trying to prop up any sort of ethnic blah blah. No. What I'm trying to do, this is history, and what I'm trying to explain is people to understand the nation that we live in and the composition of these ethnicities and what these complexities actually mean. So the missionaries come. At first, Islam was the first religion. In 1888, twalina entalo mu Buganda ez'amadini. Entalo ez'amadini ze twalina zaali wakati w'aba Christians, that is the Catholics and Protestants, as well as the Muslims n'abasamize. Twalina eddiini nnya. So these four religions in Uganda, I'll come and teach about maybe the religious wars. And most people should understand, the first martyrs in Uganda were not Christian martyrs, by the way. They were Muslims killed by Mutesa. Was it Mutesa? Yeah. They were that's why he was called Mukabia. Because he got confused with these things became confusing a wee bit for him. Like These people had never been in religion. Mutesa had converted to Islam, Mutesa the first, but things got confusing when a section of Muslims came from Egypt through the northern region of Uganda, nga source of the Nile, in order for Egypt to control the source of the Nile. So when they found Mutesa, ne bamugamba nti sebo obusiraamu bw'opracticing nga tebuliiyo, and all this kind of stuff. So later on it led to some bit of obutategeeragana, and then Mutesa had to massacre the Muslims. So entalo z'amadiini ezaali mu Buganda wakati w'abasiraamu, abasamize, abakatuliki n'abaprotestants zaaleetera abachristians to join hands oba okukwatagana. Bwe bajoininga hands ne bakuba abasiraamu n'abasamize, kati abasiraamu bwe babakuba ne badduka. They went and sought sanctuary in a place called Bukunga, ekisangibwa mu Ankole. Local chief yali abeera mu kitundu ekyo, omukulu wa kabaka wa Ankole oba local chief gwe baasanga mu kitundu ekyo, these people fought him and they captured the area. Be bayita abasiraamu b'embalala. That's why when you go to Mbarara, abasiraamu be Itendero, that's why wogenda mu Ankole, abasiraamu abasinga bonna abaliyo, they Abaganda. Be Baganda abaava mu Buganda nga baddusa entalo z'eddiini mu 1888. Era ojja bawulira basajja balaba, Chimbugwe, such names. You will hear these names because these people refused to drop their identities. Now, ekyatwala abantu bano mu bitundu bino baali bawanganguse, wabula baali tebagenze ku spreading obusiraamu. And that's why kyova olaba obusiraamu never spread in Ankole. And when they reached Ankole, Ankole was a bit backward, by the way. Because of the trade that Uganda was exposed to with the coast. Like if you see Ankole deep, wakati mu Uganda. So access to the coast was really hard. But because Uganda had been exposed to the world, so it had developed. It had been exposed to Christians. It had been exposed to Muslims. It had different traditions. So it had become modernized. And Ankole was a wee bit backward in Mabega. They did not write or read, but they had their own way of rule. But at this particular extent, Buganda was more exposed than Ankole. And so the Baganda that went to Ankole were more civilized than the Banyankole. And so that is why you see they never adopted the Ankole culture in the areas that they settled. That's why you see they never adopted the names, they never adopted the food, they never adopted the culture and customs. This has nothing to do with the Banyankole, whatever. But what I'm trying to explain is the reason as to why they never adopted. Like you can see it in the law, you can have the Banyarwanda coming into Buganda and adopting Buganda names and losing their culture, as well as losing their identity of being a Munyarwanda or being a Muhutu or being a Mututsi, right? Like you lose it completely. But for the Baganda, when they went in Ankole, they retained amanya bagasigaza ne basigaza n'enkola zaabwe ng'Abaganda okwambala amakanzu, then ne bayigiriza n'Abanyankola abamu abali interested. But the problem with them is that they never spread Islam there. And that's why you see, like, when you go to Ankole, Ankole is one of the most Christian areas in Uganda. Yawasinga Christians abangi. That is the Protestants as well as the Catholics. And that is very interesting. Now, ekyokubiri, lwaki Abanyankola abasinga they never spread, they never converted to Islam is because obusiraamu bwali bugamba nti you have to olina okutayirira. Kati Abanyankola abasinga ekyo baali tebakyagala. So it never attracted them. Ekyokusatu, abasiraamu, these people were just refugees that had gone, like, baali bawanganguse. So they didn't have so much to offer anyway. So these people never converted to the religion of Islam. But then a few years later, the Christians come. First, it was the Protestants. The Protestants ne bagenda mu Ankole. Bwe bagenda mu Ankole, ne basangayo omugaba eyaliko. I've forgotten the name of the king who was there at that particular time. So this king said, ne bamukuba akalimi. Oh, this was the Wazungu. It's so clear that the color. Now with the Baganda and the Banyankole, they kind of looked alike. But you know, nothing extraordinary. But when they saw the white man, oh, kabaka wankole n'agamba, oh, we are welcome. Kati abaprotestant kye baakola ne bagamba nno tuleesa eddiini y'abaprotestanti tukiisa Yesu bla 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 bla, no this kind of stuff. Kabaka n'akyuka. Now that was very important. Kabaka w'akyuka Owankole, Abahima bonna ne bakyuka. All the Bahima converted to Protestants. Ne bafuuka ba Protestants. Abakatuliki bagenda okujja a few years later. Batuuka in the king's court. Bagamba kabaka w'Abahima, bagamba kabaka w'Abanyankole, whatever. Nti, hey, tuzze wano tuleesa enjiri, tuli ba Kristaayo, tuli ba Christians, naye tuli ba Catholics, biki, blah 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 blah. So the kabaka was like, no, for us we are already Protestants. The divisions were deep. These divisions are deep. And I realized there is a connection to today between the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church, the Protestants. I don't know what's the difference between Protestants and Anglicans, but there is a very deep divide that is playing into the politics of Uganda even to this day, that most people cannot envision, that they cannot see, or either they are seeing it, but they are quiet. Why do you think it has been hard for Uganda to get a Catholic president? Why? Actually, okay, let me first finish this point, then I'll make another comeback. Now, Abakatuliki we batuuka ewa Kabaka. Kabaka n'abagaba already to be Protestants. So the Bakatuliki were left with one option. And most of the Protestants were Bahima, majority. So they were left with one option. They're like, okay, now, kitegeeza nti abagagga bonna, who are the Bahima, kati abagagga bonna kati bafuuse baki? Ba Protestant, ekyokukola tewali. Naye waliwo bano abaavu, peasants, the slaves, the subordinates, sikala abaavu biki? Abanyankole mujja kunzita. Okay. Ne bagamba, the Catholics were like, the only option gye tulina, tugende tukube enjiri eri abayiru bwe tuba tukuba enjiri. Nti abayiru be basigaddewo, ekyokukola tewali. Naye tebalina tebalina maanyi mu kingdom ya Ankole. But let us go and see. Boy, oh boy, they didn't know. Batuuka mu bayiru, abayiru jjukira, they are the majority in Ankole kingdom. The Bahima are the minority. The Bahima are very proud. They don't marry, they don't intermarry, they don't do anything. A Muhima will marry a Muhima. A Muiru will marry a Muiru. That's what it is even today. Now, that is a very big mistake. So what happened was, when the Catholics preached amongst the Bairu, majority of the Bairu adopted the Catholic religion. So now here we have two divides in Ankole. You have Abahima adopting Protestant as their religion, and you have the Bairu adopting Catholic religion as their religion. And so the battles began. Eranga missionaries, ne bazimba churches, ne bazimba masomero, and so on and so forth. Now here the Muslims were out of the questions, because most of the Muslims here were Baganda, and they were not that attractive. But the Muslims that converted to Islam, Abanyankole aba converting to Islam, the few, most of them actually got even Buganda names, some of them, and some of them, of course, had to learn Luganda language, because that is how Islam was being spread in Ankole, using the language of Luganda. Now, where was I going with this? To this day, Wogenda mu Ankole, the big divide. Ankole has so many, like it's a very religious area, Ankole region, between the Catholics and the Protestants. Very, very religious. era bagamba politics wa Ankole ali nnyo mu madiini. Politics wa Ankole ali nnyo mu madiini. Now, that's why when you see UPC ebibiina we bitandika, and UPC was very, very, very vibrant mu Ankole. How did this gentleman called Apollo Milton Yebote, a northerner from Acholi, lwaki yafuuka ow'amaanyi nnyo mu Ankole? It is the element of Protestantism. Ye element of a Protestant. That is why Obote was very prominent in Ankole. Not just Obote, but UPC yali very prominent in Ankole because of the religion of Protestants. Olw'ensonga nti the church had structures already in Ankole. They already had the structures and that network. So the vice president of the UPC, I've forgotten the guy's name. He was actually the president of the UPC, and then Obote was the vice president, and then this guy resigned, and then Obote became the president. Yamanyirijinga okozesa network ya church to build a strong and vibrant UPC in Ankole. Naye UPC, the reason as why he succeeded is the Protestant church yali very much engraved in the kingship of Ankole via the Bahima in one way or the other. Abantu abasinga aba UPC, like if you look at them and you're like, this guy you are UPC. But not all of them joined UPC because of religion. You will look at Mzee Boniface Byanyima. Now, Mzee Boniface Byanyima, I don't know, but to me, he looks to be like a Muhima. Now, Boniface Byanyima became DP. Right? Now, that must have had something to do with maybe him being a Catholic, but I don't think he was a Catholic. He must have been a Protestant. But Boniface Byanyima was a staunch DP supporter. So, when the DP goes into Ankole region, DP nayo yali y'amaanyi mu Ankole. Why? It is because of the Catholic Church. And so the parties that were formed on independence, zali more on two religion. UPC being a party for Protestants, DP being a party for the Catholics. And being that Uganda was a colony of the British, who were the Protestants? Of course, the politics was at play, and they had to make sure that, the Protestants would prevail. Yes, thank you very much. Byanyima is a Catholic, but a Muhima. So you see, Kakati, the division, religion had split. So people were now becoming more aligned towards religion than a wee bit of ethnicity. But still, ethnicity had a very big role to play. If you read the book of Ebi Kasozi, he has written widely about Islam in Uganda, and his books are fascinating. His research is really, really good about Islam in Uganda, and that's something that really interests me. But Ebi Kasozi writes a very important point in one of his books. He's writing about the history of Islam. Naganti, by 1888, the introduction of religions in Buganda had weakened the kingdom. How? The religious wars entalo ezaaliwo mu Buganda in 1888 between the Basamize, Protestants, Abasiraamu, n'Abakatuliki. These were wars amongst Baganda. Bano baali Baganda nga bali mu kwekuba betta. Lwaki? Lw'amadiini. Now, Kasozi says, Abaganda who were very powerful, who had waving so much in the past, were now self-destroying themselves just because of these small differences. And the allegiances, abantu allegiances ze balina towards their clan leaders, kubanga omukulu w'ekika yayinanga role ey'okuprotectinga abantu b'ekika kye. Nti nze jjajja wange Walusimbi, if at all something happens ku muzzukulu we Mayanja, my jjajja Walusimbi has to protect me. Ab'Olugavi n'Owaabi naye alina obba protecting, ab'Enkima gundi ani whatever alina obba protecting. The clan leaders had power by then. But Kasozi writes into Muchitabo che agati in 1888 during the religious wars, the people were actually, if you run to the clan leader nga yekenyini yakuwayo, jajjawo w'ekika nga yakuwayo. So the people were like, I no longer trust the clan leaders because you can see it. Now people were trusting more of the religious leaders at the time rather than the clan leaders. So it meant the allegiances had shifted from the kingdom leaderships to the religious leaders. That is Nuhu Mbogo for the Muslims. That is the leaders of the Catholic Church in Uganda by then, as well as and so on and so forth. Kabaka Mwanga and so on and so forth. Now that weakened Uganda to some extent. It weakened it. Whereas these religions, Uganda would still thrive even with these differences. But maybe at the time, they did not know how to survive with these new ideologies or the new faiths that is in the kingdom that maybe confused them at the time. So they had not learned how to live with each other. And so they turned into a self-destruction thing. It created disunity amongst the Baganda, who saw themselves as a single people before the coming of the religions. But we should argue to this day, for example, whereas these people might not have found a way on how to work on these differences, would the same apply to today? Of course not. People are much closer, people are easily understanding, and so on and so forth. So it means that people are able to work together. People are able to coexist with other people in one way or the other. Now back to Ankole. In 19, the reason as to why Kabaka Yeka did not prevail in Ankole, it is for obvious reasons. Kabaka Yeka. And by the way, Abanyankole Rwachi, most of them actually sided with UPC under Obote rather than Kabaka Yeka at the beginning. Independence na bichi. It is because Abanyankole by then they thought Buganda was being imperialistic. By imperialism, Chetegeza is that okuba nti ekitundu ekimu kigezaako okuwamba ekitundu ekirala to put it under its influence, whereby this other region is going to lose its identity. Now, this was kino kyali kintu kyakuba nti Abanyankole balowooza because they saw Buganda as a civilized country, as well as a civilized kingdom, as well as a strong kingdom, because Uganda was a very strong kingdom. It had a naval fleet. Yalina amaato. I've told you about the story of the Bajungute that went in Bukanga and literally fought the Banyankole that were there. The local chief was even arrested. Never Simba Makanda. So when these people saw Kabaka Yeka, they were like, Kabaka Yeka again afuna bawagizi wano. And so Kabaka Yeka party did not get supporters in Ankole. But it did not get supporters because of two things. Number one, Kabaka Yeka as a party, of course, it was Kabaka Yeka. It was more of a Kabaka centralized party. And the demands of the Kabaka Yeka zari on the agreement of 1900 that were demanding statehood for Uganda and not for Uganda. And most of the Banyankole nationalists, for them, were looking at the nationalistic vision of Uganda as a country. So in the end, they sided with UPC and DP. And they isolated Kabaka Yeka. That is why you see like Mutesa was not, and of course the first Baganda nti abazungu bakozesa nnyo Abaganda to as interpreters, as drivers and clerks in Ankole whenever they were spreading their colonialism in that region. And some of these people were even Muslims. And that is the other way how Islam spread in Ankole. So when Kabaka Yeka comes about, these people were not ready to take it on. Era n'ekirala bagambanga nti Abaganda, they are arrogant. And some of them were even calling them Bayai. I don't know why. I don't know Racha Banyankole was anti Abaganda Bayai. I don't know why. But that is they even write it in their whatever. If you read some of the writings of some of these people, like the perceptions of the Ankolean or the Ankole people were that the Baganda were very arrogant. Why? Because they refused to learn Lunyankole. Secondly, they refused to adopt the names of the Banyankole. Which was a bit hard because you could not marry a Catholic. Even in fact, a Catholic could not marry a Protestant. And the reverse is true. And also later on a Muslim could not marry a Protestant or a Catholic. It was hard. Angola is a very, very highly religious area. So, Kabaka Yeka fails to penetrate Ankole. Of course, Obote wins, UPC wins, and then they create an alliance with Kabaka Yeka and so on and so forth. Now, Obote Ajamu government, Chovola Anti yari very, very powerful. UPC yari very powerful in Western Uganda. Yari very powerful. Basimba ya Makanda manji. Very, very powerful. Like the Emirandla ja UPC jona tejali macholi. No. Yari Western Uganda. And that's why. It's because of religion. But then in 1972 something happens. Obote is overthrown. When they overthrow Obote, Amin realizes that the first place that these people will launch a resistance will be in Ankole region and the borders around Rwanda, Tanzania, and all this kind of. If there is an invasion that was to come for Amin, yali ina kuvaawa mu Ankole region. And when Amin comes to power, the leadership of the Catholic Church in Ankole and the Protestants, they had different receptions. Okay, they both welcomed him, blah, blah, blah. But now they realize that, the third player, who was the Muslims, because Amin was a Muslim. So they realized that Amin yazembe kulemeze Muslim. The Muslims in Ankole have been subjugated. Like they were the lowest of the low, the Muslims in Ankole. Bebari was senyo. Because when Obote was in power, he appointed mostly Protestants in positions of power as administrative officers, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. So they oppressed the Muslims and they oppressed some Catholics as well. But then when Amin comes to power, one of the fascinating things is when he visited Ankole, the three religions had to come and give a speech and pray for the country. The Catholics, the Protestants. And for the very first time, Muslims in Ankole were given a platform to play for the country. And that was a sign of what was yet to come. So the Christians in Ankole were very, very suspicious. They realized that Amini is going to try to turn Ankole into a Muslim region. That's what they thought anyway. But it was hard because the Christians were by far, like, for example, I think in 1920, the number of Christians was 20,000, over 20,000 Christians, 20,000 Christians. And the number of Muslims in Ankole at that time was just 400 people. It couldn't happen. Show it. So as Amin was in power, because you should remember that these Basiram in Ankole, they still had the identity of being Baganda. That one you should know. Even today they call them Baganda by Itende or whatever, Baganda by things like that. Yeah. So when Amin was in power, a few Muslims were elevated in administrative positions, Wanawali and stuff like that. And Amin also did something that is very funny, not funny, but fascinating. He started Yatandiko Kola Mauledi in Ankole region for the very first time. Now, Mauledi is the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Kati Mauledi zino, the Catholic Church and the Protestants bagenda ng'oziraba. Buli we baazirabanga obuzibu bwa Mauledi bwalinga. The problem with the Maulids is that, and these things are documented and written, and I was reading these things and I was like, really? Is this true? And the writer, the author of these things, he was a Protestant. Inti Mauledi, they were very interesting. Zalinga zi attractinga abachi aba Christians. Because kwalingako muchere n'enkoko. Now the problem is inti ngawe mumanyi Uganda yaffe nti abantu omuchere n'enkoko tubiryako kuki Christmas na Idi. Kati most of the Banyankole were very interested in attending these Mauledis. The first Mauledi in Ankole, I don't know if this guy was exaggerating, but he said, Mauledi jebaso kokola mu Ankole. Bata irira Banyankole 15. Guy nagati. When Amin realized nti Mauledi muzali zisiramula abantu mu Ankole olw'omuceere n'enkoko, they started making more Maulets. Eyaddako baasala 2 awo wennyini ku sport. And you know these people of the 70s and the 60s bo baalinga tebasaaka. Wewagambiranga nti nsiramu nga bakwata shri nga bakusala. So these people were being cut in order to access rice and chicken. These things are documented. If you see people are coming from Ankole, they can tell you. Abakulu, if there are people here who are old people, if you people, and I'm not saying this because I'm a Muslim or whatever. I'm telling you this because this is history. And this is really interesting. Ntiba amini yakolanga Mauledi egundi eyo mu Ankole region. Ezalinga teziberawo. Nga bagenda ne baziberako abantu ne bajja ne bali omuchere abagundi abasinga ne basiramu kiroko ku Mauledi. Now, when I read that statement, it connected with something very interesting with me. I don't know if you guys, for those of you who are Christians who are watching me, and those of you who are Muslims, there is a time when the churches in Uganda were preaching the idea nti ennyama gye tuteeka mu muceere nti ye nnyama gye tusala ku bantu ne tugisuula mu muceere. Or did you guys hear those things? Nti ennyama eno gye tusala gye basala ku bantu abasajja mu gye tuteeka mu muceere ne tufumba. Now they were saying those words in order to avoid people from coming to eat Muslim food, pilau and all that kind of stuff, which is interesting. So these are religious fights that you guys again a mass in the 80s, 70s, 60s, and post-independence Uganda. The reason that's why I'm telling you all this is for you to have a very big picture of our country. And for you to understand some of these nitty-gritties so that you might not be able to know. Because when you know these things, you don't look at most of the issues of Uganda the same way. So Ankole, that is how it happened. Now, the Banyankole, most of them, they were Rio Banyankole, not these ones, the Baganda that went there, the Muslims. They were saying most of them were Bayais, most of them were Babi and stuff like that. So it was literally they were saying the Bagandas were thief, the Baganda bari bamanyi bari babbi, and also they were saying that these guys were um, what is the word that he used? Ntitebali, like they were really, really undermined. Baringa once they were the lowest of the low. And when Amin comes to power, the tables turn. And but what is very interesting in all this is this: the Catholics, you see, in Uganda, most of you, I don't know if you have seen this, but the Catholics and Muslims, they are the Muslims, the Catholic Church and the Muslims are more connected than the Anglican Church. If I don't know if you guys see that, abasiraamu n'abakatoliki, they are wee bit. It's not formal, it's not there, but you can see there is some sort of, they're a bit connected mukatono. So when Amin comes to power, there was that bit of connection in Ankole. The hierarchy ran in that Muslims were on top, the Catholics were there next, and then the Protestants were a wee bit down. When the Protestants were down, they collided with the Gorillas, the Musevenis, and the Tanzanian invading forces, and then they overthrew the Amin government. Now, when the Amin government is overthrown in 1979, Yusuf Olule comes to power. But Yusuf Olule was not a Muslim, because he had to convert to Christianity in order to attend King's College Voodoo. Because you could not go to school in schools like Buddha, you could not attend these schools. If at all you did not, you were not part of that religion. So you had to convert first, and then you could be able to access education. That's what happened to Yusuf Olule. And that is in 1979, that is what led to the massacre of Muslims. Most of you, I don't know if you have heard about it. Okuttibwa kw'abasiraamu Mbarara, in Itendero, in 1979. Over 60 Muslims were murdered, executed, killed brutally. That's what led it to that. It is because the reason as to why these Muslims were murdered is that because these were women, children, and old people. Old people. These people were innocent. They were not even part of the Amin regime. But most of them were accused of being part of Amin's regime, being spies and stuff like that. And these people were massacred for nothing, literally nothing. And, most of them have now even been forgotten. But they were saying that the murderers were saying that they were Bikola on the orders of Museveni and Edward Rurangaranga. I'm doing a story about that incident as well. Now, that brings me to today. What does this mean? So I realized something. Ankole is deeply religious. Number one. Number two, Ankole ina factions ibiri, the Bahima and the Bairu. Now I've not mentioned the Randis. And I'll come to that point of the Randis as well in my later episodes. But this showed me into the Bahima have, or the Protestants from Ankole have literally captured the Anglican Church nationwide, the Protestant Church, whatever. But unfortunately, the Protestant Church is getting a bit weaker. It's getting weak. But under the grip of the Bahima. Okay, under the grip of the Ankole Kingdom of Akari. If you have been following, if you know what I mean, I don't know the best way to phrase it. Chovola Kazimba Mugalu is literally alinga gwe baakuba empiso anyonya ssente za kizimbe. That's all. He doesn't care about anything else. He's no longer in control. So the Anglican Church, literally now, these guys like they have taken it on. Chovola Banti, it's not bad. Chovola Banti, Mbabazi now is very visible all over the place and all this kind of stuff. You know, they have those programs, Chido program, you know, it's not bad, but you can see now like they are literally in control over the church. Now, of course, these churches have different dioceses, minor politics, diocese, but it all goes back to Kazimba Mugalu. Now, here you have someone who is a Muganda and who has power, control, but then that power is taken away from him, and now the power is directly in the hands of the state. This also means we see the rise of the Barokole, the born-again Christians. Now, the biggest chunk of born-again Christians, Bavamu Protestants, as well as Catholics and some Muslims, but mostly those two Christian dominations, the biggest chunk. Now, you see here, into the born-again Christians, now they are under the grip of the state, under the first family, that is Janet, as well as her daughters. By doing this, I'm not saying that the entire congregation, no, I'm talking about the top echelon, abakulembeze ba churches zino, they are under the grip of the state, but the people are not all people. Most of the people are not. Chovola Banti, Buganda has the biggest concentration of born-again churches all over the country. But Museveni couldn't win a single position in the Uganda region. Why? Why? Buganda has the biggest portion. No part of the country has the number of churches and the number of born-again Christians like Buganda. But they didn't win. The other thing is, do you think, from what I said, do you think that the politics of Anglicanism, the politics of Protestants and Catholics is still at play? Now, tebikomawo, by the way, era natuddawo nendowooza nti tetuliddamu okufuna kiyinza okuba ekizibu okufunayo president omusiraamu. But now the thing is this, it brings me to Britain. Abangereza be baki? Be ba custodians of the Protestantism, whatever. Almost, I would say. The head of the Protestant church is the Archbishop of Canterbury, I think, Jack Welby. And Jack Welby has been visiting Museveni several times. What does that mean? Jack Welby, the head of the Protestants, or the head of the Anglican Church, has visited Museveni twice in the past 5 years. What is at play? Archbishop Sentamu, who contested with Jack Welby for the Archbishop of Canterbury, because Sentamu is the Archbishop of York, but he contested with Jack Welby. Archbishop Sentamu is silent about Ugandan issues. Does it come as a coincidence? No. Why? Waliwo ekyokusukuma church, reviving a church ya Anglican mu Uganda. Yes, George Karamaji, I've seen your comment, but I'm not here discussing religion. I don't think you were here when I started because my discussion is not talking about religion or whatever. But these are just my thoughts. You don't have to listen. You don't have to watch. But this for me, these are just my thoughts from my research, from my readings, and I only share my thoughts with anyone that wants, and you can think about them. And I don't know. So, does that make sense to you? Does it? Chikola sense kume. Nti Jack Welby contested with Archbishop Sentamu. The Archbishop Eyasala Kola because of Mugabe could not cut the collar because of Museveni. Why? They share the same religion. Where are all these where are all these Anglican bishops, the Zach Nirinjie and all these people? Where are they? Father Gaetano, where are they? But this, I mean, literally, I don't know, but I think there's something there. Now, if it is Messenger, it could be a different case. Why do you think His Excellency Chagula cannot come to the UK, where he has the biggest support base? Why? Muvene ku byobufuzi. I'm not telling you this to kumalamu bantu manyi, but I want people to understand what we are dealing with. I want people to understand that this is serious. This is deep. It is deep. It is deep. Where is Father Gaetano? Father Gaetano, he comes from the West, or Archbishop or whatever. Father Gaetano is a nice man. Father Gaetano yali akaye. Zach Niringie n'ekirevu kye kiri silver beard. Yeah, Father Gaetano. Yeah, Father Gaetano is a Catholic. Yeah, but then we have to go back to like the identities that I described initially. I think Father Gaetano must be a Muiru, in one way or the other. But still, I mean, for me, what I think here is this. Nti, nti, you see, like there's this idea that the devil than the angel. So there are so many things that are trying to connect these so-called elites, that connect them with Museveni, right? Like Father Gaetano is much more closer to Museveni than he would be closer to anyone from Uganda. But if it is someone from that region, like Besije, or if it is someone like Babazi, then Father Gaetano can hop onto it because that's closer to home. So Father Gaetano should be prominent right now. Kuvangali outspoken. He should be out there saying something. But they're all quiet. Zach Niringie, Bishop Zach Niringie. You get it? Now, these people have a lot of power within the church, within the churches in Ankole. The network they made for Obote, the network they made for CJ. Why are they making those networks? Because you see those people in Ankole, these people are innocent. If Museveni had support, let me tell you one thing. Singa Museveni yalina obuwagizi mu Ankole region, teyandibbye bululu. Ate gye mmanyi gye bagenda okunonda, ate gye mbanziba, nina kubba eri gye mmanyi gye batagenda kunonda. But the widespread rigging and intimidation, the biggest chunk of it was in Ankole. Lwaki obba obululu mu Ankole? Bubba eri walala. It means he does not trust the people. He does not trust these Ankole people. The Bayiru people, those because the Bahima are very Bahima bakambwe nnyo bazibu nnyo abo. But these Bayiru ones. And remember, the Bayiru are the majority in Ankole. They are the majority. The Bahima are the minority. And to this day, most of the Bahima and the Bayiru, they do not intermarry. They do not tebajoining. They don't intermarry. Like Westerners. The divide between these two people is really, really deep. It's a divide on religion. It's a divide on identity. Yes, Majid. Abasajja nali njagala bampite and we sit down and debate their federalism. Naye baagaana. I wanted very much to sit down where they would debate for federalism and I would debate against federalism today. But they refused to come out. But I would have loved that discussion, not just to see which idea wins, but just to have that conversation. And maybe they pose questions, I pose questions to them about the idea of federalism. Because if you're propagating an idea that has no challenge, then it's just a pipe dream. But if someone comes, Nabuza, and I ask my questions that are deep, then maybe you answer them and then maybe have this conversation. It would be interesting. Majid Hamid, yeah, I tried, but it doesn't seem like they're interested. They're just good at. I was fascinated that they even got my video. Those guys are funny. Video and they went there and they misinterpreted my words. Right? They misinterpreted my words, and I was made the topic of the entire show, which is funny, but I would love to engage them on these matters of federalism. But anyway, guys, for me, this is how it works. And now making sense of the entire picture that we have been discussing, making sense of the entire picture and why it is international to me. Why it is international to me. Jack Welby, the head of the Anglican Church here in the UK, has met Museveni twice. And of course, Anglican Church is losing followers in the UK. People no longer go to church here. The biggest battle of Christianity now is in South America and Africa. And I can predict the next Pope is likely to come from Africa. Oh, actually, they said the Pope who is going to come from Africa, I think, resigned or something. Sorry, the bishop who is likely to become the next Pope, I think he resigned. But the reason as to why on a Pope aliko bamulonda kuva South America is because religion, Christianity, is dying out in Europe and America. And also the birth or the growth of born-again Christianity, the revival churches and all this kind of stuff. If we say it is too rampant, it is taking away so many Christians from the Anglican Church as well as the Protestant Church. As well as the Catholic Church. And it is a very big threat. So Museveni is working two ways. Chovolanti, he has so many. I was talking to a friend of mine, because I wanted to understand Janet. Because Janet is the one who is controlling actually the church to some extent. And people will tell you this. Even Kazimba Mugalu has a direct connection with Janet Museveni. Janet Museveni is the handler of Mr. Kazimba Mugalu. With all due respect. Okay, I don't have proof to that, but if I'm to connect dots, but Janet Museveni, I believe, without fear of contradiction, that she controls the entire born-again churches in Uganda. Yeah, controlling abasumba bonna. Like the Anglican Church and the Protestants, they are all in their grip like this. And they are using that power to, suffocate any resistance to their bukulembeze. But what is fascinating is that what we call a still, there will be a way. There will be a way. But for me, these are just thoughts that I had. That why is the UK so hard on the fight against dictatorship in Uganda? Why is the UK so hard? Rachi UK hard on us. Like literally, America has been forthcoming. America were very, very good to us. But the UK, no. Chovola wano musajja wabe James Dadridge even congratulated Museveni without ngayita tidde na kutya. He congratulated Museveni. Jack Welby has visited twice. Sentami is quiet. Yet we have over 500,000 Ugandans living here. This should be the mecca of resistance. But even they are fighting so hard. Okulaba nti n'omukulembeze waffe cannot step into the UK. Why? So, those were my thoughts today. I don't know. Oba olina kyoyagala oteesa osobola okunkubira ku ssimu. Essimu yange mugimanyi. And you can tell me what you think on the issues. Bwe mba nina weekoze ensobi, you can tell me. But you guys can all see nti it is the Catholic Church that has really been forthcoming, okay? But Anglican Church but they really hard. And when we told the Sentamo about this issue, he never said anything. Now, it's a Chabachwez, by the way. Some other day, maybe. Because that Bachwez issue, if we are going with the other hypothesis, the Bahima came from Ethiopia, then it means that Museveni has no link with the Bachwez. I want to link with the Bachwez, literally. I want to because he came from Somalia. And like John Speak and these other guys say. Whereas I might not believe that, but it is something we can look into because we're claiming out your Muchwez and stuff like that. It doesn't make sense. Museveni was not a Muchwez. And Muchwez is a myth. It might even be a myth in one way or the other. But it's an interesting phenomenon anyway. So, yeah. So that is Uganda. Some other time I'll come. Ekyatugenda kubeera n'omwogezi wa NUP mukulu wa Islam Fumbiro ku ssaawa 11 za Uganda, inshallah. So endeavor to attend, tujja kubeera naye. Ku Sunday, Mr. Mosh ayinza okujja ne tuyita mu posts za His Excellency Bobi Wine ne tulaba. Mwe mugende mutunuulire lwaki Anglican Church eri interesting nti mugende mutunuulire mujjukira okusaba kwe baateekawo Archbishop gundi omugenzi eyafa bonna abagenzi ne bafa baateekawo okusaba Kazimba Mugalu yagaana bayita Namirembe Lubaga no Namirembe. He refused to call them in Namirembe kuba gye baali balina okusabira. You guys, can't you see? Can't you see what I'm trying to explain here? Kazimba Mugalu refused. Yagano bahosting, yagano hosting a Cyprian, Kistoranga, ne Yona, Eyakafa, those two gentlemen. He refused. Bagende namungona ne basaba, ne bagende rubaga ne basaba. When it was the turn of the Anglican Church to host these prayers, to pray for Uganda, Kazimba Mugalu chickened out. Who controls Kazimba Mugalu? Musajja wa Katonda n'alimba ku kigambo kye, n'alimba basajja banne, bakulu banne, n'ababuzaabuza. Kivaawa. It is coming from somewhere. Embaga ya mutabani we Museveni yagiriko era yagisasulira ndowooza. Kitegeera. So that is church politics, oba religious politics aliwo. To my small understanding ku nsonga ezo. Okay, guys. Yeah, the doves even refused to fly. I remember very well. Yeah, Harriet Marinda. The UK has a very big role that it is playing in the background. They are playing something in the background. They are. And it's connected to the Anglican Church. Because the patron of the Pentecostal churches, the patron of the born-again churches is Janet. Chovolaba nti abasiraamu, because Catholic Church kati yebadde ng'erwanarwanako, because like it has tried to stand against any sort of intimidation nachi. Of course, the Muslims have also been trying, but it's hard for us. Like, omusiraamu wogeza n'ojjayo omutwe nga bakuteekako ogw'okuba nti gwe wateze ebbomu. Kiraba. Now that is the abyss Uganda gyerimu. But why would the Anglican Church be interested in Uganda? Number one, you might ask. First of all, we need to ask, why would Jack Welby visit Uganda twice? Rachi, why would he visit Uganda twice in 5 years? Now, I know the Pope has also visited Uganda. Papa visit here in Yajuzi. But Welby's visit, would you comparing a Pope visit? The Pope visit was more of a religious visit for the Catholics. But Welby's visit, yali sketchy. Yali a bit sketchy. Nga teri clear. Chulira. But of course, the interest of the Anglican Church has always been into, they always want a Protestant to be in power. Now, I mean, sneaked through. You're sneaking through. Chovolaba, what is funny in Uganda is this. Amin is not the one who committed the worst atrocities in the country, by the way. He's not among the people who committed the worst atrocities, but he's among the most hated presidents by the West, not Africa, by the West. The reason as to why Amin is so hated is because nti Amin yalengeza nnyo abazungu. That's it. But most of you, they will say nti Amin yatta abantu webati. Yes, if we are to go with the numbers that they give, nti he killed 250,000 people. But between Obote and Museveni, they killed 500,000 people in Luwero and more. And also, you should know, nti Museveni confessed nti they would commit crimes basobole okuvumaganya government. So it is difficult to distinguish how many murders Museveni committed and his thugs that we can attribute to them and the murders that were committed by Amin. This does not mean that Amin did not commit these crimes. He did commit these crimes. But also you should understand, Museveni says, nti Amin kasita yawamba, Museveni ye yatandikirawo okulwana, meaning that Museveni did not give a chance to Amin. So Amin as a person, he also had to fight. Okwerwanako. Naye ekisinga okuyinza abazungu lwaki tebaagala Amin, it is how he denigrated them. Like, you can go and read the like Amin, like they said, he's literally popular. He's very, very popular amongst Africans. If you go to Gambia, there's a gentleman gwe baali bayita Maria Mungu after one of Amin's general in the Gambia. Dumbuya, one of the colonels abawambye Konde, one of the colonels bamuyita Idi Amin Dada after Amin of Uganda. He named it, one of the colonels named himself Idi Amin. You go and Google it, or Google Idi Amin Dada Guinea Conakry. They will show you the guy. Tupac Shakur yayimba enyimba ze nga he is praising and talking about Idi Amin Dada. Now, I'm not saying Idi Amin never committed crimes. He didn't commit crimes. He had his shortfalls. At the time when Uganda was still young, and you expect those falls. But Tupac sang about Amin in one of his songs. I don't know what the song is. Let me look for it here. Oriyimba Tupac Yayimba about Amin. I was listening to the song. You might not listen to Tupac's music because of the language, but yeah. Huh. Now, this is the line that Tupac sang. No. Actually, yeah. Mugundi ye. Mukruye. Mwalimu Tupac. Mwalimu Castro. Mwalimu Idi Amin. Mwalimu Mompre and Gaddafi. Castro, Idi Amin, and Gaddafi. Shegera. Yeah. Idi Amin, yeah, was one of his one of the people he sang with. Now, let me read it for you here. It says that in 1995, upon Tupac's release from prison in Greenwich, Tupac, Bruce Feto Washington, Gaddafi, Mompre Shakur, Castro, and Napoleon formed the group Outlaw Immortals, and later changed to Outlaws. Tupac gave each member of the group an alias from an enemy of the United States of America. Shakur gave Greenwich the alias Idi Amin after the former Ugandan president, Amin. On the 13th of February 1996, Tupac's double LP, All Eyes on Me, was released. Idi Amin appeared on Trading War Stories, When We Ride, and Thug Passion. On June the 4th, 1996, Tupac's How Do You Want It single was released. its beside Hit Them Up featured Idi Amin, Feto, and Gaddafi. It is considered as one of the most aggressive diss songs in history, dissing Bad Boy Entertainment, Chino XL, Junior Mafia, and Mob Deep. Now, on the 7th of September 1996, Tupac was shot 4 times in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada. He was taken to University Hospital where he died 6 years later, 6 days later. Idi Amin was in the car behind Tupac, but claimed he did not identify the murderer. Idi Amin and the rest of the outlaws moved back to East Coast after Shakur's death. So that's it for you guys. But this is fascinating that Tupac gave each member of the group an alias from an enemy of the United States of America. Shakur gave Greenwich because that guy, on a guy, Malcolm Greenwich. Shakur gave Malcolm Greenwich the alias Idi Amin after the former Ugandan president, Idi Amin Dada. You should also understand this gentleman called One Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan. Let me see. Louis Farrakhan met Idi Amin. Louis Farrakhan, yeah? If you go and Google, if you go and Google Louis Farrakhan meeting Idi Amin. Now, that was very fascinating because by that time, the Nation of Islam was very prominent in 1970s. It was very prominent among the black nationalistic movements in America. And anyone who liaised with the Nation of Islam, because Nation of Islam, you might say whatever you want about it, but it was very prominent. Elijah Muhammad, because Nation of Islam is the one that made people like Malcolm X. It's the one that made people like Louis Farrakhan. And the discipline that these people had, it was literally one of the most feared black organizations in America because of how it managed to organize the black people. FBI under J. Edgar Hoover, I mean, it was literally, I mean, the Elijah Muhammad's and Malcolm X and all these people, they were being trailed by the FBI and the CIA wherever they went. Malcolm X details all this thing. For those of you who follow American politics, Martin Luther King. Now, Martin Luther King was not part of the Nation of Islam. But what I'm trying to mean here is that the Nation of Islam, one of its founders called, not one of its founders, but one of its, who is now the head of the Nation of Islam, called Louis Farrakhan, he met Idi Amin. So when they write bad about Idi Amin, you should know where it is, you should know where it's coming from. Because yes, you can write bad about him, but we know people who have done worse than him. How come they are not being mentioned? You get it? This gentleman of Venezuela, El Presidente. What's his name? That gentleman of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez. Let me read for you what Hugo Chavez said about Idi Amin. All right. Chavez has defended. Okay, where did he say? Okay, Chavez praised Museveni as Chavez praised Amin as brothers and said that the Ugandan leader may have been a misunderstood patriot. Hugo Chavez. Again. So when you want to understand if at all a leader is popular or not, you need to go back to the people of that particular country. What do they think about this guy? Bamuloza coach. Right? And Amin is becoming popular today. He's becoming more popular than Museveni, which is interesting. Yes, he did his Yakolin so easy. But, and I realized this thing, most of you don't know. Do you know the idea of divide and rule? Museveni is following the Obote blueprint. Because in divide and rule, Museveni has used more of divide and rule policies rather than uniting the country to be able to entrench himself in power. Now, Amin, Teyaza Kabaka, that one we all know. And it was, we all know why. But at least he had the courtesy to return the body of the king and also to be clear on that, that the kingdom is not going to be restored today and all the kind of stuff. And so the Baganda knew that, okay, it's not working. It's not going to work for now. But he united Muslims. For the very first time, the Muslims were united. I don't want that. It comes back to work, right? And he gave most of the religions their due. But even you see, of course, like ethnicities, for him, he was more of a nationalistic guy. He was real. For him, what he wanted is Uganda, united Uganda. That's it. Amawanga senior and stuff like that. But then Museveni, on the contrary, for 35 years, the Muslims have failed to unite under Museveni's regime. Literally, the two as Muslims, we have never worked together for 35 years. And that's what Obote did. Obote, to manage Muslims, he made sure that there were always two factions or three or four. To some extent, it had atari Muslim, Namu Chivina Chavasiam, back creating a Chino Babachita Nam or whatever, I don't know. Nachiteka Mukodo Mukanda Wakumanga Chifuga Muslim. That was Obote. Now that was politics for him. Again. Obote nazanye ebyobufuzi bye mawanga as well for survival. But you see, that is what they call politics of survival. The politics of dividing and ruling is just to survive for each day. Buli lunaku oluba luyitawo. Kyova olaba nti leero mujja kugenda mu Baganda ne bakola Saabanyala, simanyi Saaba kino, Saaba kiri, and you divide them into small tribes. N'ogenda mu Batooro n'obakyankalanya, n'ogenda mu Basoga n'okyankalanya, Abakyoli n'okyankalanya, Abalango, all that. N'ojja ne mu church zaffe nazo n'ozikyankalanya, emizikiti. I mean, no dividing, you divide as you rule. By the time these people wake up, bagenda ozuuka emyaka 15 later, already movies. Kitegeera? So that's what Obote did. But Obote was not ruling. He was just surviving. Yari surviving, I'm surviving. And by the way, kyenera bagamba. Bwe bamala okuggyako Amin, olukwe olw'okuzza obote lwalukibwa mu Ankole in 1979. Olukwe olw'okuzza obote, it all started in Ankole gye lwalukirwa. Kyobola n'akalulu kwa 80 elections. Obote got 124 seats. Bamuseveni n'ekibiina kyabwe ekya UPM, who were the Banyankole as well, they got 0. Oba baafunayo omubaka omu. Kiraba. Of course, they were rigging and stuff like that. But bringing back Obote, it all started in that region. Of course, this was due to the church. It had the influence of the church. Now, ekigisaako Obote mu 72. Why the British supported Obote's removal. It is because Obote naye kennyini, he was more of a politician, and he wasn't he wasn't so much into Anglicanism, he wasn't so much of a Protestant. He wasn't very religious. And the other thing above all, Obote was a socialist. He was a socialist. And by then, socialism had become a big threat to these former colonies, whereas the colonial masters were trying to tighten their grip of former colonies as sources of labor and all this kind of stuff. They couldn't let Obote to survive. So when Amin took over, the British welcomed the coup. They welcomed the coup. So naturally, Sigoku Amin as well, internationally, it's also because of his religion anyway. But Amin yazalawa nnyo Abangereza. That's the problem. That's why he really has bad press. Kyobola bamuwandiikako mbu yalyanga ebibumba by'abantu, yalya ono, yalya ennyama y'abantu and stuff like that. Which is interesting. But anyway, guys, those were my thoughts today. We shall be having most of these conversations in future as well, maybe once a week, and then we can see. Next time I will try to talk more about I think Acholi and Bunyoro. I will either talk about Bunyoro or Acholi, and we'll see where we go from here. And also in Western Uganda, there are some other tribes, the Minok Tegera, the Bahororo. Then you have the Bachiga. Actually, most of you don't know, but the Bachiga come from Rwanda. I also didn't know wait, what? Abachiga bava Rwanda? Yes, the Chiga. They are related to the Bahutus. Abachiga bava Rwanda. We meet Bachiga. They are Rwandese. They come from Rwanda. So you have the Bahororo, you have the Bafumbira. Who are these people? How did they end up in Uganda? Before the British expanded to Ankole, you should understand it. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. This is very important. mugende musome report eno, colonial report 1920 April December. Okay. This is a report ubundi akatabo ke nasoma kakalaga boundaries zino kalenda just 1 minute. Katono. Yali document ki bannaye? It's a document that was showing yeah. Okay. Olwo map gye nnoonya bannaye, map eno beeruwa? Just looking for something here, guys. So wallahi document yembuze. Chuka bannaye. Anyway, ndowooza ajja gifuna olulala. Alabika y'eno document. Okay, now let me show you this thing. I'll end with this, but it is important for us to know these things. Okay, kangezeemu awo katono. Okay, now this is international boundaries. This was a paper written, yeah? International boundaries and interstate relations in the Nile Basin by Talat Ahmed Ibrahim. It was written in May 1984. A thesis submitted for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. It was a dissertation by this gentleman in May 1984. Now, of course, he was talking about yali ayogera ku ngeri boundaries gye baazisalamu and what the people that were affected by these boundaries. Okitegeera. So when he came, I will get the other thing that shows. Map z'engeri gye yazikubamu naye alimba. Sudan Zaire border. Kali kamap, waliwo kamap kengenda okubanyonyeza naye kati wano kambalage just some interesting thing here that he mentions. Okay. Now wanagamba the list of tribes whose territories are cut through international boundaries. What this means literally is nti waliwo abantu abasalwamu layini. Okitegeera. So kati wano akulaga Sudan Zaire no kati Sudan Uganda. Now kitegeeza nti wano tulina abamadi, some of the Madis are in Sudan, that is South Sudan today, and some of the Madis are in Uganda. It is because of the boundaries. Ekolachi eyabasalamu. Then Uganda, Kenya. In Kenya, some people, they are Kalamajongs abali cut off nga bali Kenya, Sebeis and the Wanga bali side ya Kenya, whereas bali side ya Uganda. This is because of the boundary. Eyabakolachi eyabasalamu. Kenya, Tanzania, we have the Luo and Masai. Then Uganda, Zaire, and Uganda, Burundi. Now, Uganda, Zaire, you have some people called the Mundus, body in Uganda, this side, as well as Zaire. Then Rwanda, Burundi. This is Uganda, Zaire, and Rwanda, Burundi. Abantu bano basalibwamu border. Now, you have the Banyoro, that is Uganda, Zaire, right? Some Banyoro are in Zaire, some are in Uganda. Then you have Batoro, some of their people are cut off nga bali Zaire, naye abalala nga bali Uganda. Then you have the Nkole. Now Nkole, some of these people are cut off. Abanyankole abamu bali cut off nga bali mu Rwanda. But remember, Abanyankole twagaye balikebi. We have the Bahima and the Bairu. That's why you see like the Bahima are related with the Batutsi in Rwanda. Now the Bachiga, chobola nageti the Bachiga bava Rwanda. Beba Hutu abasala ne bayingira Uganda. The Hutus are short, strong, but like baina n'ennyindo zaabwe ziringa zaffe. So those are the Bachiga. They are cut off within Rwanda and babasalira in Rwanda, then the babasalira ne mu Uganda. But some of them even also migrated within Uganda as well, the Bachiga. But their originality is more from Rwanda. So guys, I'm going to get these maps tomorrow. Let me look for these maps. Maybe my next presentation. Boundaries, Ugandan boundaries, how the state was created with these boundaries and how, these people that were cut. But this document is very interesting. Somewhere, but I'm looking for the other document here. Map, because the maps really bring it out very well. This one has some maps. The maps is really clear. The sort of maps that I'm looking for. The kind of maps I'm looking, the kind of map I'm looking for. Okay, the kind of map I'm looking for. Let me show you the kind of map I'm looking for. That's how it looks. Map. Kati mulaba Uganda gye yali eyita. wano woolabe obusaze, that is where Uganda was, ng'eyingiddeko Sudan eri, eyingidde Kenya eno, kino ekitundu kyonna kyona kyemulaba twali tuyita eno ku Lake Rudolph, kyemuva mulaba Amin yali akyagala. Amin wanted to extend Uganda paka up to Lake Rudolph. Kati eri map endala gye nnyonya, it even had this Kagera Basin nga it is part of Uganda, but all this was map bagifunza. Kati you see this area here from Sudan to Uganda, kino ekifo kyali kya Sudan, this was Sudan, then ne bakijja Sudan ne bakiwa Uganda, then ne bakwata kino wano waggulu wano ne bakisala ku Uganda ne bakiddiza Sudan. Okitegeera? Then this was from Uganda to Kenya. So Uganda yali eyita wano wait. Okitegeera? Ne bakino ekifo bakiwa Kenya. Bakiwa Uganda. Bakiwa Kenya from Uganda. Then this one was from Uganda to Kenya as well. Wano wonna. All this was Uganda. All this. Akakasajja. It was one man called Sahari Johnston. Ye yakola bino boundaries. One man. That is how we find ourselves today in these boundaries, in these countries. It took one white man to make these decisions. One man. Sahari Johnston. Good night. Assalamu alaikum.